Valentine's Day weekend. There are a lot of big releases I could talk about, but truthfully, if I'm being honest to myself and to my audience, I have no desire to see Captain America Brave New World, or at least talk about it. And I haven't seen any of the Paddington movies. I'm not going to start now. But I went to the cinema, as I am one to do, and they put on this film that I had heard about, and I'm like, well, I do like this genre of movie, but I'm not the biggest fan of this band. We're talking about Becoming Led-Zeppelin, the new documentary about the formative years of Led Zeppelin. How did they come to be who they are today? It's one of the most seminal bands in the history of music. So I mean, yeah, that's cool. I like a documentary about a musician. I almost like them more than I like a musical biopic. And it's one of my favorite eras of music. I just think everybody was like at the top of their game. They were making choices and defining genres in a way that nothing really was happening like it before. And it's just so cool. So I'd rather see that than the other movies I just mentioned. So Becoming Led Zeppelin, it's been out for a while now. I don't talk a lot about my musical taste on this channel, and I get that, like there's people that have their whole channels dedicated to talk about music and artists and that kind of stuff. I grew up listening to a lot of Led Zeppelin stuff. Like, it is one of those bands that I think everybody is culturally aware of, but I would never put them on, like, my list of my most favorite or influential bands for me personally. I think their music is really cool, and I think they were very important and very formative for a lot of bands that are playing today and bands of like the 90s and 80s. And they had a very distinctive style that really ushered in a new era of like 70s rock and blues and like that alternative style. And, a lot of it comes from these guys who just kind of like sprang out of nowhere and changed the game. So I didn't know anything about the history of the band or anything. So I really enjoyed this, actually. I like seeing people talk about themselves, especially in like retrospect, and like this generation of rockers and musicians where it's like we're coming off the cocaine highs and the drugs and the sex and all this stuff, and now we're in like our 70s and we can just like look back and say like this was a very interesting time in our lives, and it's kind of hard to talk about sometimes. I think that's great. One of the smartest things that this documentary does is not talk about like the whole trajectory of the band. We have 2 hours and some extra minutes to talk about like the formative formation of Led Zeppelin. We see where all 4 of these guys started off, how they got to know each person individually, and the first year, like when they first came to America, when they like sold their first album, to when they started to blow up. So like 1968 to like 1970 is like where we're talking about. That's really cool. Like, that is a very important moment in history, is those 3 years. And I'm always a sucker for showing you events going on in the real world as we talk about a specific thing happening. And this movie does that a couple of times. We're showing you, here is Zeppelin coming to America. At the same time, Vietnam is underway, the civil rights movement is underway, these important things in history are happening. And then as they're starting to tour, the moon landing and like the rockets launching, I'm like, this is crazy. Like, we're seeing this like evolution of music and technology and sciences and all of that happening at the same time. It's like so cool to see that. But this is also about a band. So if you don't know the story of Led Zeppelin, you got the band guys, you got Jimmy Page. He's not the singer. He's the guitarist. He's kind of the one that created the band. He's like a producer on the first album and a very influential voice in music. Somebody I am sure if you're watching this, your parents are very aware of. Like, he was a very impactful producer and musician. You have Robert Plant as the lead vocalist. And I'll say this, like, if you were to ask me, like, who's your favorite vocalist in all of rock history? I think I would say Robert Plant. I think the stuff he can do with his voice is unparalleled. Like, we rarely see anything that crazy. He is so good. And then John Paul Jones on bass. Like, I love him. He was probably my favorite guy just like cut back to talk about in retrospect, because he has this like quiet aura of a guy who's just, I don't know, They're just having fun. Just a couple of kids doing stuff, and this is what happened. Very jovial, very aware of himself, and I think that's really cool. And of course, John Bonham passed away in the 80s, so we do have some like unused vocals recordings from him, like an interview at the time, and it was really fun to see the filmmakers interject like him talking about his bandmates and seeing them like react to it today with stuff like they've never heard him say before. I thought that was really cool. There's also like this really cool idea where we see the filmmaker showing them like festivals they performed at, and it's like from areas and footage that they've never seen before because they've only seen like still images of like this festival. I think it's the one in like Dallas or something. It's really interesting, and it's really cool. And then just like, it's a band, so let's just watch them perform. We're seeing highlights and clips from like these guys performing like their hits from like the earliest days, like the first gig they play as Led Zeppelin, not with some of them as like the Yardbirds or whatever, to they're fully formed. Here's like an evolution of like these 3 years where these guys figure out the kind of music they want to make and do something cool. And I just love seeing talented people do the thing they're talented at. And you just see these guys, their energy is just so comfortable together. They're willing to like ease each other into different places. So somebody's like, I'm going to go here with the drums and I'm going to lead into the guitar riff here. And it's such a good balance. And so interesting. There's some really cool like dissolves and just like different lighting stuff that we're seeing with like the old footage just to give it like a more archival, intense viewing. I think it's really impressive. And there's a lot of these out all the time, and I always just have a soft spot for seeing like it was a different time. But that is one of the most formative times, not just in music, but in like the modern culture we see today. Like 68 to 70, shit is happening. And at that same time, you have 2 albums coming out from Led Zeppelin. They're taking over the charts from like the Beatles. They're becoming like one of those staples out of like Britain that is just like exploding in America. And you're just seeing how they're connected to all this music scene and the things that they are good at. It's truly beautiful to see. It makes me smile. I like that there's just so much comfortability in them talking about each other and their performing arts. And like I said, this isn't going to like, and this is like the tumultuous part where there's like the ups and downs and everyone gets like lost in this shit. It's more just like old guys being like, we were having fun. We were doing good. There was girls and we had families, and yeah, stuff happened along the way. Maybe one of our guitarists got involved with a very young girl. They don't bring that up at all, which it's fine. It's very interesting, and it handles itself very well. And that's just what I like to see, you know? I had a really fun experience, and watching this with the crowd I did, it wasn't like a packed showing because the film's been out for a while. And let's be real, you're not going to get like a full house coming to see the documentary about Led Zeppelin. I was the youngest person there. And hearing these older people just like talk about like their favorite song or just get into it like, oh my goodness, like he was influenced by this artist and this like going over here talking about, you know, like James Brown and stuff. It's really exciting. I think it was just such an incredible, moving experience. And they're a good band. Like alone, if you just take all 4 of these guys alone, you're talking about like some of the best, if not the best in their specific instrument. You could totally make the argument that each one of these guys is the best performer of the instrument they are playing. But you take all 4 of them together and you have this experimental sound they are making. You are just witnessing the birth of one of the most important and influential musicians and acts ever put to history books. It's really fun. I really enjoyed this. I'm glad I saw this as opposed to other stuff that's out right now. So, becoming Led Zeppelin, I am going to give an 8 out of 10. Now, thank you all for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And of course, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.